I stood in the doorway of our cramped kitchen, watching my wife, Karen, sort clothes with the kind of focus you'd expect from a judge handing down a life sentence. Her words still burned in my ears, sharp and toxic, like fumes from a busted engine. If you've got a problem with me hooking up with your buddies, you can hit the road. They won't mind. The toaster pinged. The fridge rattled in the corner. A delivery truck rumbled down the street, hauling away the morning's trash. The world kept spinning, but my marriage had just slammed into a brick wall. Fine, I said, my voice flat. Karen glanced up from the pile of shirts, her eyes narrowing. She'd braced for yelling, maybe a smashed mug, not this calm surrender that seemed to throw her off balance. I snatched my keys off the counter. My work boots thudded on the linoleum floor she'd nagged me to replace last summer, back when we were still pretending we had a future. That's it? She called as I headed out. I stopped at the door. Which buddies? The question hit her like a punch she didn't see coming. Her lips parted, then clamped shut. She hadn't expected me to dig for specifics. Mike and Greg, she said, jutting her chin out. And Tim from your crew. I gave a single nod, the kind I'd give when a wiring job checked out clean. Then I stepped out into the damp November morning. The greasy spoon on Market Avenue served coffee strong enough to peel paint and hash browns that tasted like they'd been fried in regret. I ordered both and slid into a booth by the window, where I could keep an eye on the street. My phone buzzed with texts from Karen, excuses dressed up as apologies, long-winded defenses I didn't bother reading past the first word. I deleted them all. The waitress, a woman named Doris who looked like she'd been slinging coffee since Reagan was in office, refilled my mug without a word. You look like a guy with a storm cloud over his head, she said, eyeing me. Had a storm, I corrected. Now I'm just a guy with answers. By noon I was at the job site, a library remodel that'd keep my crew busy through spring. Tim Harper was by the breaker box, fiddling with a multimeter on circuits I'd already checked 3 times. Solid worker, shaky morals like half the guys I know. Yo, Tim, I said, leaning against a steel beam. He didn't look up. Karen called, said you two had a blowout. She tell you why? Tim's screwdriver fumbled, nearly hitting the floor before he caught it. She was rattled, said you might need to talk to someone. I'm talking to you, I said, pulling out my phone and opening the voice recorder. Tell me about Thursday. What? His voice cracked. Thursday, when you, Mike, and Greg hit the bar on 5th after the crew meeting, and Karen pinged you to meet her at the Motel 6 off Highway 12. Tim's face went pale as drywall. Man, I can explain. Not asking for excuses. I'm asking what went down. On record. My phone sat on the toolbox between us, heavy as a judge's gavel. Tim stared at it, then at me, my face blank as a cinder block. It wasn't planned, he muttered. It just happened. How many times? 4, maybe 5, last couple months. I stopped the recording. Appreciate the honesty. I walked off, leaving Tim frozen by the breaker box, mouth half open, like he'd just seen a ghost. At 2:30, I swung by Mike's office, a small setup for a contractor who'd been lowballing bids and jacking up invoices for a decade. Nobody called him out because Mike was sharp with math and smoother with clients. His office sat above a canal where barges hauled timber and scrap metal toward the old factories downstream. I'd gotten Mike this gig after his divorce 7 years back, vouched for him when his ex's lawyer tried to paint him as a deadbeat. Pete! Mike shot up from his desk, knocking over a soda can. Hell, I heard. Karen called. She's freaking out about you. She say why? Mike mopped at the spill with a wad of napkins. Said you stormed out this morning, that you found out about stuff. What stuff? Come on, man, don't drag this out. I dropped into the chair across his desk, the same one we'd sat in to plan camping trips or gripe about life. How long, I asked. 3 months, give or take. Mike tossed the soaked napkins in the trash. Look, it wasn't supposed to go down like that. She showed up at the bar one night when you were pulling overtime. We got to talking, had some drinks, and she said you two weren't connecting anymore. So you stepped in to connect? It wasn't like that. What was it like? Mike fumbled, words tripping over themselves. She said you guys had an open deal, that you were cool with her seeing other people as long as it stayed quiet. I tilted my head. I seem like the open deal type? She showed me texts from you, saying it was fine if she kept it discreet. Show me. Mike grabbed his phone, scrolled, and handed it over. I scanned the messages, supposedly from me, full of phrases I'd never use, referencing talks that never happened. This ain't my number, I said, pointing at the screen. It was 1 digit off from mine. Mike leaned over, eyes wide. Son of a... Yeah, I said, handing the phone back. She played you. She played all of us, Mike muttered, staring at the screen like it was written in code. I stood. Yup. I left him there, hunched over his desk, looking like he'd just been hit by a truck. Greg Vance ran a shipping crew for a distributor that kept half the city's diners stocked with frozen fries and canned tomatoes. We'd grown up 2 blocks apart, played football together in high school, stood up at each other's weddings. Greg had a thing for sports betting and a habit of talking bigger than his spine could back up, but he was like a brother, or used to be. I tracked him down at the warehouse office after the night shift, hunched over delivery logs trying to make the numbers add up. He looked up when I tapped the doorframe. Hey, man, Greg said, his grin shaky, not reaching his eyes. What's got you out here? Had a chat with Mike earlier, I said, leaning against the wall. Greg set his pencil down. Yeah, about what? We locked eyes across the cluttered desk. Outside, a forklift's beep echoed off the concrete walls and high steel rafters. How much do you owe Jimmy Russo? I asked. Greg flinched. Jimmy ran numbers for half the city's compulsive gamblers, fair until he wasn't, and everyone knew the line. 15 grand, Greg admitted, voice low. What's the juice? 2.5 points a week. How far behind? Greg scrubbed his face with both hands. 7 weeks. I ran the numbers in my head. 15 grand at 2.5% weekly, 7 weeks late. Rough spot to be in. Greg's debt was piling up faster than he could shovel it down, even if he'd been making steady payments. Russo's boys come around yet? I asked. Not outright, Greg said, but his cousin Vinny swung by the house last week just to check in. Scared my wife half to death. I pulled out my checkbook. I'll cover it. Pete, no way, Greg protested, shaking his head. I can't let you do that. It ain't charity, I said, scribbling out the check. It's a deal. I tore it off and slid it across the desk. $22,000, enough to clear his debt with some cushion for the interest. What kind of deal? Greg asked, eyeing the check like it might bite. The kind where you help me sort out a mess. He picked it up, hands trembling just enough to notice, then tucked it into his wallet. What mess? Start with what went down at the tavern on Crescent Street last Wednesday. Greg swallowed hard. Karen made it sound like you were in on it, like you two had some kind of open setup. Yeah, I heard about that setup, I said, pulling out my phone and hitting record. Tell me about the motel. For the next half hour, Greg spilled everything while my phone captured it all. He described the meetups at the Motel 6, Karen's rules about keeping things classy, how she spun it like we were all in some modern, enlightened arrangement instead of her sneaking around with my buddies behind my back. She said you were seeing someone too, Greg added. Some lady from the zoning office. Claire something. Maybe Turner. Claire Turner? I knew her. She handled permits for commercial wiring jobs. We'd met once for coffee to go over breaker panel specs for the library remodel. 10 minutes, all business, not a hint of anything else. Anything more? I pressed. Greg shook his head. That's it, man, I swear. I stood to leave, then turned back. Don't call me man. Real friends don't sleep with each other's wives. The words landed hard and Greg slumped in his chair, the check in his wallet suddenly feeling like pocket change compared to what he'd just lost. I drove home through rush hour traffic, weaving past strip malls and fast food joints that made every town look like a carbon copy of the next. My phone kept buzzing with texts from Karen. Longer now, panicked, like she was starting to realize my silence wasn't just me licking my wounds. It was something colder. The house was pitch black when I pulled into the driveway. Karen's car was gone. I let myself in, moving through rooms that felt like they belonged to someone else. The recliner where she'd cozied up with my friends, the dining table where she'd spun her lies, the bed we'd shared for a decade while she planned her double cross. I headed to my den, fired up the laptop, and spent the next 4 hours digging, public records, court documents, business filings, property deeds, credit reports. A couple $100 on database searches bought me a blueprint of weak spots. By 1 a.m., I had dossiers on Mike, Greg, and Tim, their debts, their dirty laundry, their pressure points. I also had one on Brad Kessler, the fitness coach Karen had name-dropped as her real connection. His gym sat in a repurposed warehouse turned into retail space. Building permits listed a max occupancy of 120, but his Instagram showed weekend boot camps packing in double that. Fire exits were padlocked after hours to deter break-ins. The point-of-sale system went cash only after 9 p.m. I jotted it all down. Violations, habits, leverage. My phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. Your wife's at my place. Says you kicked her out. Brad. I stared at it, then typed back, "Tonight. Tell Mike and Greg. Tonight." I didn't wait for a reply. Instead, I scrolled to Claire Turner's number and left a voicemail. "Pete Walsh here. We need to talk about code issues at the Canal Street gym. Call me." I leaned back in my chair, a grin creeping across my face for the first time all day. At 5:30 a.m., my phone rang. Mike's number. "Pete, what the hell did you do?" he groaned. "What's wrong?" I asked, playing dumb. "I'm in the damn ER. So's Greg. So's Tim. All of us. Same symptoms. Same time." I sat up in bed. "What happened?" "Food poisoning, they're saying. Doctors are asking where we ate, who we were with." "Hope you guys pull through," I said, keeping my tone even. "Don't play me, Pete. This ain't random." "Nope," I said. "It's not." I hung up and drove to the hospital. The ER at Bayside General reeked of bleach and stale coffee. Mike was in the waiting area, looking like he'd aged 10 years. Greg was hooked to an IV in a curtained bay. Tim was down the hall, puking his guts out. Detective Sam Holt was taking notes. I'd worked with Sam on a couple of precinct wiring jobs. Sharp guy, knew a coincidence was usually a setup. "Walsh," Sam said, spotting me. "What brings you here?" "Heard my buddies were sick. All three, same time, same symptoms. Doc thinks it's poisoning?" "Looks that way," Sam said, eyeing me close. "Where were you last night around 11? "Home, crunching numbers for a bid." "Anyone back that up?" "My wife could, when she's done at her boyfriend's place." The words landed like a brick through a window. Sam's brows shot up. "Trouble at home?" "Was trouble," I said. "Not anymore." "How's that?" "Trouble stops when you stop giving a damn." Mike shuffled over, moving like he'd been hit by a truck. "Pete, we gotta talk, alone." Sam gave me a long look, then glanced at Mike. "I'll be in touch, Walsh. Don't book any flights." When the detective walked off, Mike grabbed my arm, his grip shaky. "What the hell did you do to us, Pete?" "No idea what you're talking about," I said, keeping my voice steady. "This ain't food poisoning. This is something else." I stared at his pale face, eyes sunk like he hadn't slept in days. "If you mess around with a guy's wife, you might catch something bad." "That's not how it works," Mike snapped. "Maybe not, but that's how payback does." I turned and left him clutching a flimsy waiting room chair for balance. At the nurse's desk, I asked for Greg. A worn-out nurse in scrubs covered with cartoon dogs pointed me to room 12. Greg was propped up in a hospital bed, IV dripping into his arm, a puke bucket within reach. He looked like he'd been dragged through hell. "Hey, man," he croaked, voice barely there. "I told you, don't call me that," I said, pulling up a chair. Greg's eyes fluttered shut. "I'm sorry, Pete. For Karen. For lying. For being a lousy friend." "I know you are. Can you forgive me?" I leaned back. "Remember when we were kids and you swiped $10 from my dad's wallet for comic books?" "Yeah." "And I covered for you when he asked where it went?" "Yeah." "You swore you'd never pull anything like that again." Greg's eyes opened, wet and red. "This is like that, except you didn't take $10. You took my marriage. And instead of comics, you bought motel rooms with my wife." "It's not the same," he mumbled. "You're right. It's worse." I stood. "That check I gave you yesterday? It'll be clear. Your debt to Russo's gone. But we're done. No more friends. No more family. Just two strangers who used to know each other." Greg tried to speak, but I was already out the door. In the hospital parking lot, my phone rang. Claire Turner. "Mr. Walsh, got your message about the gym. What violations are we talking about?" "The kind that could kill someone," I said. "How soon can you meet?" "I'm grabbing lunch at Gino's Diner on Front Street at 1 p.m. You know it?" "I'll find it." Gino's sat in a weathered brick building that had cycled through a dozen eateries in the last 15 years. The owner, a gruff Italian named Gino, slung burgers big enough to feed a crew and coffee that could jumpstart a tractor. Claire was in a back booth, scrolling her tablet, picking at a chicken sandwich. She was younger than I'd pictured, maybe early 30s, with a no-nonsense vibe that said she valued brains over flash. "Mr. Walsh," she said as I slid in across from her. "Thanks for coming. You said people could die. That's not something I ignore." I pulled out my phone and showed her pictures I'd snapped at the gym the night before. Fire exits bolted shut, breaker boxes buried behind weight racks, extension cords looped like tripwires across the floor. "Good Lord," she muttered, swiping through the shots. "When were these taken?" "Last night during their big Friday night workout bash." "How many people were there?" "Close to 250 in a space rated for 120. She set the phone down. Why bring this to me? Because it's a fire trap, and because the owner's sleeping with my wife. Claire leaned back, crossing her arms. So this is personal. It's about safety. The personal part's just a bonus. She studied me, sizing me up. What do you want? Do your job. Inspect the place. Write up the violations. Shut it down if you have to. I can't just act on a scorned husband's tip. You can act on a citizen's report of real hazards. I slid a manila envelope across the table. Building plans, occupancy permits, insurance docs, and screenshots from 6 weekend events showing crowd violations. Claire skimmed the contents. How'd you get all this? Public records, social media, all above board. Why should I trust you? Because in a few hours, 3 guys are getting discharged from Bayside General after overnight treatment for what looks like poisoning. All 3 have been at those gym events. All 3 were exposed to whatever's wrong with that place. It wasn't true, but it sounded convincing, and Claire was the type to take her job dead seriously. I'll check it out, she said. When? Friday night, during their next big event. I nodded. Appreciate it. Don't thank me yet. If this is a dead end, I'll make sure you regret wasting my time. If it's not, you might save lives. I left her with the envelope and picked up the tab for both our meals. That night, I sat in my den, making calls. First to the bank about a loan backed by my contractor's license and the equity in our house. Then to a lawyer who handled civil lawsuits. Then to a PI who specialized in digging up dirt for insurance cases. By 10 p.m., I had a plan to dismantle Brad Kessler's life. Legal pressure, financial hits, regulatory clamps, all of it clean and crushing. My phone buzzed with a text from Karen. We need to talk. I typed back, no, we don't. Pete, please, I screwed up, but we can fix this. Nothing to fix, it's already in pieces. I love you. I stared at those 3 words, once the center of my world, now just letters on a screen. I deleted the message without answering. At 11:15, someone knocked on my front door. Through the peephole, I saw Brad Kessler, a big guy, maybe 6'3", built like he spent more time posing than lifting, decked out in a flashy leather jacket and a smirk that said he'd never faced real trouble. I opened the door. Something I can do for you? We gotta talk, he said, all confidence. About your wife, this whole mess. I stepped onto the porch, pulling the door shut behind me. The November air was sharp, our breath fogging in the cold. What mess? Look, I know it's weird, but Karen told me about your deal, how you're both free to see other people. What deal? His smirk wavered. The open marriage thing. She said you're seeing some chick from the zoning office. Claire Turner. Yeah, that's what she said. I kept my face blank. When'd she tell you about this deal? A few months back, when we started connecting. When that connection started including my buddies. Brad shifted, his boots scuffing the porch. What do you mean? Mike, Greg, Tim. When did they get looped into this deal? His cocky grin vanished, leaving him looking like a guy who just realized he'd stepped into a trap. I don't know what you're talking about, Brad said, his voice tightening. Sure you do, I shot back. You let them use your gym for their little meetups with my wife after hours when the place was supposed to be empty? That's not true. I pulled out my phone and shoved a photo in his face. Mike's truck in the gym lot at 11:45 p.m. Timestamp clear as day. Gym closes at 10. This was Wednesday. Brad stared at the screen, his jaw clenching. I don't know why his truck was there. Because he was screwing my wife in your office. Same as Greg did on Friday, same as Tim last Sunday. Christ, Brad muttered, shaking his head. She said it was just me. Said you two had some kind of deal, but she was only stepping out with me. She played you too. We stood there on the porch, the cold November air biting at us, our breath puffing out like smoke. A cop car rolled by, the officer giving us a slow once-over before moving on. What do you want from me? Brad asked, his bravado gone. Nothing. Bull. You didn't drag me out here to swap sob stories. I didn't drag you anywhere. You showed up. So what's your move? I shrugged. What I always do. My job. Which is? I'm an electrician. I fix what's broken. Brad searched my face, looking for a threat or a hint of what was coming. All he got was a blank stare, which seemed to rattle him more than a fist would have. We're done here, he said, turning away. Yeah, we are. I watched him climb into his sleek Audi, the kind of car that screams money most folks don't have. As he peeled out, I memorized his license plate. Back inside, I called my PI. Vince, it's Pete Walsh. I need a full workup on Brad Kessler. Finances, criminal, civil, business, personal, everything down to what he eats for lunch. What's the budget? Vince asked. Whatever it takes. My kind of client. I'll have something by Monday. I hung up, poured myself a whiskey, no ice, and sank into the couch. Brad's words echoed in my head. He didn't know the full scope of Karen's games, which made him a pawn, same as me, but that didn't make him less of a problem. At midnight, my phone lit up. Karen. Pete, please, just hear me out. I'm listening, I said, voice flat. Brad told me you talked. Said you've got photos. I've got a lot of photos. What do you want? It was the first real question she'd asked in months. No spin, no excuses, just her admitting she was in deep. I held all the cards and she knew it. I want you to get something straight, I said. For 10 years, I thought we were building something real. I worked double shifts to pay for this house, your SUV, those trips to Florida, the furniture you said we needed to feel complete. I planned our whole future thinking we were a team. We are a team, she said, voice cracking. No, you made me a fool. You and your buddies spent months laughing behind my back, turning me into a joke while you played house with half my crew. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. Silence hung on the line. What now? She asked. Now you deal with what comes next. I knocked back the rest of my whiskey and set the glass on the coffee table. What's that mean? You'll see. I hung up and went to bed, sleeping like a rock for the first time in ages. Saturday morning came with a drizzle and a sky that looked like it was mourning something. I headed to the job site, running cable through conduit and trying not to think about what Claire Turner would find at the gym that night. Tim showed up around 10:30, still gray from his hospital stint, moving like he was afraid his body might betray him again. You holding up? I asked. Feel like garbage. But I'm here, he said. Good enough. We worked quietly for a couple hours, wiring outlets for what'd be the city manager's office. Tim was a damn good electrician when he wasn't distracted, but today he kept shooting me nervous glances, like he was waiting for a trap to spring. Pete, he said finally. Yeah? What really happened to us Wednesday night? I checked a circuit with my multimeter. Clean signal. You got sick. All three of us. Same time. Same symptoms? That's no accident. Weird how life lines up sometimes. He set down his pliers. I know you did something. I looked up, meeting his eyes. What do you think I did? I don't know, but it's too perfect. Sometimes things just fall into place. He hesitated. You gonna fire me? Fair question. I could cut him loose, and he'd given me plenty of reason. You want me to? No, I need this gig. Then do the work. We got back to it. At lunch, I swung by Gino's diner and ordered the same chicken sandwich Claire had the day before. While I waited, my phone rang. Vince. Pete, got that background on Brad Kessler. Guy's waving more red flags than a bullfight. Give me the short version. He's in debt up to his ears. Jim's bleeding cash. He's 3 months behind on rent, and his business partner's been pocketing money from the till. Business partner? Tara Flynn, 28, no record, but she's running side hustles out of the gym. After-hours parties, off-books training sessions, memberships that don't hit the ledger. I scribbled notes on a napkin. What kind of hustles? The kind that don't get reported to the IRS. I've got records of at least 60 grand in cash deals over the last 6 months. Anything illegal? Tax evasion's federal, unlicensed business is state, overcrowding's municipal. Your guy's got trouble coming from all sides. Personal life? Clean, no arrests, no major debts, no obvious bad habits. But he's been lying to Tara about the gym's books. I nodded, tucking the napkin away. Send me the full report. Tara thinks the gym's holding steady, Vince said. Brad knows it's 6 months from going under. I jotted that down on the napkin. Send me the full report. Already in your inbox. What's the tab? Call it even, Vince said, chuckling. This was more fun than tailing deadbeat husbands. I hung up and headed back to the job site. Brad Kessler's weak spots crystal clear in my mind. The guy was drowning in debt, lying to his partner, and running a gym that broke every rule in the book. All I had to do was push the right buttons at the right time. At 5:45 p.m., Claire Turner texted, "At the gym now. We'll update you." At 8 Walsh, she called, "Walsh, you weren't kidding about this place. Capacity violations are off the charts." How bad? Maybe 350 people crammed in a space rated for 120. Fire exits bolted, wires dangling like a death wish, and they're pouring drinks without a liquor license. Can you shut it down? I'm writing citations that'll close them by Tuesday. But tonight, I'm calling the fire department before someone gets crushed. I could hear thumping music and voices in the background, folks partying in a ticking time bomb. Do what you gotta do. This'll tank their business, she said. Good. A pause hung on the line. You really got it out for this guy. I got it out for people who think they're above the rules. At 9 I cruised past the gym. Fire trucks lined the lot, their lights bouncing off the wet pavement. People spilled out of the building, some pissed, some dazed, all soaked by the drizzle. Brad stood by his Audi, waving his arms at a fire inspector, panic written all over him. I parked across the street and watched. The fire department would slap him with violations. The city would pile on fines and closure orders. The state would dig into the illegal booze. The IRS would come sniffing for the off-books cash. Brad's world was about to implode. At 9:45, my phone rang, Brad's number. You bastard, he spat. Good evening to you too, I said, calm as ever. This was you. The fire trucks, the inspector, the whole damn thing. Wouldn't know anything about that. This is about Karen. This is about you running a death trap and calling it a gym. Someone could have died tonight. You could have gotten someone killed. And I made sure you didn't. Silence stretched out. Then his voice came back, low and sharp. What do you want? Nothing. I can pay you to back off. You don't have money. You're 4 months behind on rent. Your equipment loans are tanking, and Tara doesn't know you've been skimming from the till. Another long pause. How do you know that? I make it my business to know. What do you want? He asked again, desperate now. I want you to get that screwing around with another man's wife comes with a price. Stay away from Karen, and you'll only have to deal with the fire department, the city, the state, the IRS, and Tara finding out you're a crook. I hung up and drove home. Sunday morning, I made coffee and flipped through the paper. A small blurb in the local section mentioned a downtown gym shut down for safety violations. No names, no details, just a quick note most folks would skip. My phone buzzed with text from Karen. She'd heard about the gym, said she was crashing with a friend, begged to come home and fix things. I deleted them without reading past the first line. At 11:30, Mike called. Pete, we gotta talk. I'm all ears. Not on the phone. Meet me at Rusty's. Rusty's bar was a dive where contractors and city workers gathered to gripe about taxes, bosses, and life. I'd been coming here for a decade. Mike was at the back, hunched over a beer, looking like he'd been through a meat grinder. His face was gray, his frame thinner than it should have been. You look rough, I said, sliding onto the stool next to him. Feel worse. Doc says I'm a week from normal. What's on your mind? Mike waved for another round. I know what you did. What did I do? The gym raid, the fire department, the violations? I took a sip of my beer. Heard it was a dangerous spot. You set it up. You tipped them off, handed over evidence, made sure they got nailed. Why would I do that? Because Brad was sleeping with your wife. I set my beer down slow. Brad was sleeping with my wife. You were sleeping with my wife. Greg was sleeping with my wife. Tim was sleeping with my wife. If I was out for blood, I'd need a bigger target than one gym. Mike stared into his glass. What's your next move? What do you mean? What are you going to do to us? Nothing. You're going to do it to yourselves. I pulled out my phone and played the recording from Mike's office, his voice spilling details about the affair, the fake texts, the motel hookups. Turn it off, he snapped. Why? You said it all. I just hit record. You can't use that. It's illegal. Not here, one-party consent state. As long as I knew I was recording, it's fair game. Mike's face was drained of color. What are you going to do with it? Probably nothing, unless I need to. Need to for what? Whatever comes next. I finished my beer and stood. Pete, hold up, he said. What? Are we square? No, Mike. We're not square. We're not anything. Just two guys who used to know each other. I left him staring at his beer, the bar's neon lights reflecting off the bottles behind him. Monday morning, the bank called. My loan was approved. $60,000 backed by my contractor's license and the house, enough to buy up the loans on Brad's gym equipment. I drove to the bank and signed the papers, locking in my next move. By noon, I'd bought up every loan tied to Brad's gym equipment, treadmills, weight racks, the works. The monthly payments were $3,500 and he was 3 months behind. At 1:30, my lawyer called. Got the paperwork for loan acceleration ready, she said. File the default notice and the full balance is due immediately. How much? $52,000 plus interest and fees. If he can't pay, you can seize the equipment and sell it to recoup your money. I made the call from my truck, parked outside the shuttered gym. The place looked dead, with boards over the windows and yellow violation notices plastered on the doors like a crime scene. "Brad, it's Pete Walsh." "What now?" he snapped. "Business. Meet me at Gino's Diner in an hour." "I'm not meeting you anywhere." "Then listen up, because I'm only saying this once. I own the loans on your gym equipment, every bench, every bike, every damn kettlebell. You're 90 days late, so I can call the full balance due. $52,000, 30 days. Silence crackled on the line. "You still there, Brad?" "You can't do that." "Already done. Papers get filed this afternoon." "I'll get a lawyer." "Smart. Ask them about loan acceleration. Then ask how much it'll cost to fight me." "What do you want?" "Sign a quitclaim deed, hand over your stake in the gym, and I'll wipe the debt." "The gym's worth more than that." "Not now. Not with the city violations, no revenue and a trash reputation. It's worth what someone will pay, and that's me." He went quiet again. "When?" "Today, 5 Gino's. And if I don't? In 31 days, I'll repo every piece of equipment and auction it off. You'll get whatever scraps are left, which won't be much." I hung up and called my lawyer. "Prep the quitclaim deed. Need it by 4:30. "Think he'll sign?" "He's got no choice." At 5 I was in the same booth where I'd met Claire Turner. Brad showed up 15 minutes late in a faded hoodie and jeans, looking like he hadn't slept or eaten right in days. "You ruined my life," he said, sliding in across from me. "You pitched in," I said, pushing the quitclaim deed across the table. "Sign this and we're square." He scanned the pages, hands unsteady. "This gives you everything. Equipment, lease, the whole business." "Yup." "What about Tara?" "She can work with me or find something else. She doesn't know about the money problems. She'll figure it out." Brad grabbed the pen I'd set out, his fingers shaking as he scrawled his name. "There," he said, shoving the papers back. "Happy now?" "I'm satisfied." "What's the difference?" I tucked the deed into my jacket. Happy was before I found out my wife was sleeping with my friends. Satisfied is knowing I've handled it. Brad stood, then turned back. "What about Karen?" "That's between me and her. She loves you, you know." "No, she loves the guy who pays the bills while she messes around. Maybe you two can sort it out." I shook my head. "Some things you don't fix. You just start over." Brad walked out, and I sat there thinking about the gym I now owned and the wife I was done with. Outside, the November evening buzzed with traffic, folks heading somewhere, living lives that made sense to them. My phone pinged with a text from Greg. "Can we talk?" I typed back, "No." "Please, Pete, I want to make this right." "You can't. Let me try." I stared at the screen, then deleted his number from my contacts. At 6:30, I drove to the gym. The violation notices were still taped up, now with my name as the owner. I had the keys from the loan docs but didn't go in. Instead, I called Claire. "Pete, how's the violation cleanup going?" "That's why I'm calling. I bought the gym, the equipment, lease, everything." "You what?" "It's mine now. What's it going to take to clear the violations and reopen? Why buy a place shut down for safety issues?" "It was a steal," she laughed. "Fair enough. You're looking at new fire exits, electrical rewiring, proper signage, maybe a sprinkler system, probably $120,000. Do you know any good electricians?" "I'd call Pete Walsh. Word is he's solid." I chuckled. "I'll track him down." I hung up and walked the building's perimeter, mentally mapping the upgrades. It'd take 4 months and more cash than I liked. But I'd end up with a real business, something that employed people, served a purpose, and outlasted revenge. At 8:30, I got home. Karen's SUV was in the driveway. She was on the porch steps, wearing the coat I'd gotten her for her birthday last year. "We need to talk," she said as I climbed out of my truck. "Thought we covered that." "You talked, I listened. Now I want my turn." I unlocked the door and we went inside. The house felt like a demilitarized zone, a place where old enemies might hammer out a truce. "I heard about the gym," she said. "That you bought it, that Brad signed it over. Word gets around. He called me. He's a wreck." I poured a whiskey and sank into my recliner. Karen stood by the window, her silhouette sharp against the streetlights. "What do you want me to say?" I asked. "Explain why you tanked an innocent guy's business." "Brad wasn't innocent. He ran a hazard zone, dodged taxes, and lied to his partner." "You don't know that for sure." I pulled out my phone and opened Vince's report, sliding it across the coffee table. "Read it." I slid my phone across the coffee table, opened to Vince's report. Bank statements, tax filings, violation notices, Proof of cash skimming. I know exactly what's what. Karen flipped through the pages, her face going ashen with every line. Where'd you get this? Doesn't matter. You've been digging into him, into all of us. I've been figuring out who you really are. She set the phone down, hands trembling. And who's that? Someone who lies to get her way. Someone who tricks people into thinking they're part of some fancy open relationship when you're just cheating on your husband. It wasn't supposed to go like this, she said, voice small. How was it supposed to go? I don't know. I thought you'd get it. Get what? That people change, that marriages shift, that sometimes one person isn't enough. I knocked back the last of my whiskey and set the glass on the table. Know what I needed? What? A wife who didn't sleep with my friends. The words hit like a slammed door. Karen flinched like I'd swung at her. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For Mike? Greg? Tim? Brad? Or just for getting caught? All of it. I'm sorry for everything. No, you're sorry it didn't work out like you planned. That's not true. Sure it is. You thought you could have your little side games and keep the steady marriage too. Thought I was too dumb or too soft to notice. Pete, please. You thought wrong. I walked to the window where she'd stood earlier. Outside, the neighbor was walking his mutt, same loop he'd done every night for the 10 years I'd lived here. Routine, predictability, the stuff that keeps life grounded. What now? Karen asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You move out tomorrow. This is my house too. No, it's not. Mortgage is in my name, paid with my sweat, kept up with my hands. You brought nothing but the lie that we were in this together. I could fight for half. Go ahead. Ask a divorce lawyer how cheating plays out in court around here. She went quiet, staring at the floor. Where am I supposed to go? Don't care. Pete, can't we try to fix this? I turned to face her. For a decade, I'd thought she was the most beautiful woman alive. Now she was just a stranger who knew where I hid the spare key. Nothing to fix. You made your choices. Live with them. What about forgiveness? What about it? Don't you believe in second chances? I believe in consequences. Her eyes welled up, not the fake tears she'd used to twist people's arms, but real ones, raw and heavy. I love you, she said. No, you don't. You love what I stood for. Security, a safety net while you played the field. That's not true. It's dead on. I was your backup plan, the guy you kept in your pocket when the fun ran dry. I never meant to hurt you. You did. You just didn't mean to get caught. I walked to the door and held it open. Time to go. Where am I supposed to sleep tonight? Brad's place, Mike's, Greg's, Tim's. You've got options. She grabbed her purse and keys, moving like she was stuck in a fog. At the door, she paused. Will you change your mind? Not now. Not ever. She walked out, and I locked the door behind her. I poured another whiskey and sank into my chair, the house's quiet creaks wrapping around me like a blanket. For the first time in months, the silence felt right. Tuesday morning, I drove to the gym and let myself in. The place smelled of bleach and old sweat, with dust-covered equipment sitting like relics of Brad's busted dreams. Tara Flynn was waiting, perched on a weight bench with a coffee mug and a notepad. You the new owner? She asked. Pete Walsh, I said. Tara Flynn. Guess we've got some talking to do. She was younger than I'd pictured, late 20s with a practical kind of pretty, cropped blonde hair, no makeup, clothes built for work, not show. Brad said you were his partner. Business partner, not the other kind, if that's what you're thinking. Wasn't. Good, because that'd make this messier than it needs to be. I glanced around the empty gym. What's on your mind? Whether I've still got a job. You want one? Depends on what it is. Running a gym the right way. Proper permits, safety measures, taxes filed. Tara grinned. That'd be a change. Meaning? Brad was always cutting corners. A lot of corners. Safety violations, cash deals that never hit the books, memberships sold under the table. You knew about that? I asked. Tara nodded. I had a hunch. Ask questions. Brad told me to stick to training and leave the business to him. But you didn't. Someone had to keep an eye on things. I sat on the bench across from her. Tell me about the after-hours parties. What about them? Your idea or his? His brainchild, my legwork. He wanted extra cash flow. I wanted to keep the power on. How much cash? Tara glanced at her notepad. About $2,500 a month, all cash. No receipts, no paper trail. Where'd it go? Rent, utilities, repairs, whatever kept the place afloat. None in your pocket? Not a dime. I'm not dumb enough to steal from my own business. But Brad was. Brad was desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. I stood and walked to the front windows. The violation notices taped to the glass didn't feel like a death sentence anymore. Just problems I could fix. I'm reopening this place, I said. Legal, safe, profitable. You in? What's the catch? No catch. Just hard work and straight dealing. What about Brad? What about him? He was your partner. He was my friend. Not a great businessman, but a decent guy who got in too deep. Decent guys don't run death traps and dodge taxes. Desperate ones do. I turned to face her. You defending him? Explaining him. There's a difference. Fair, but he's not part of this anymore. Tara jotted something on her pad. What's my role? General manager. You run daily operations, memberships, schedules, staff. I handle permits, renovations, finances. Pay? $45,000 a year, plus bonuses if we turn a profit. When do we start? Soon as the city says we can reopen. Tara stood and stuck out her hand. Deal. We shook, and for the first time in months, I felt a spark of something new. Not for my marriage or old friendships, but for a clean start, something honest. Over the next 4 weeks, I poured everything into the gym. New fire exits, rewired electrical, proper signage, sprinklers. I brought in contractors I trusted and watched every detail like a hawk. It was pricey and grueling, but it felt like building something real, not just tearing down what was broken. My phone went quiet. No more calls from Karen, Mike, Greg, or Tim. No apologies, no excuses, no attempts to patch up what was long gone. Detective Sam called once about the food poisoning case, but it was a dead end. 3 guys got sick at the same time, same symptoms. No proof it was anything but bad luck. Sometimes life hands out justice to those who earn it. On a chilly Thursday in December, Claire Turner swung by for the final inspection. Looks solid, she said, ticking boxes on her clipboard. Exits clear, wiring's up to code, signs posted. You're good to reopen. When? Paperwork's filed today. Should be cleared by Monday. I walked her to the door. Thanks for the help. Thanks for doing it right. She paused. Can I ask something? Shoot. Was it worth it? The revenge, tanking Brad's business, ending your marriage, cutting off your friends? I glanced around the gym, clean, safe, ready for people chasing better versions of themselves. Tara was at the desk, updating member files. I didn't tank Brad's business. I bought it. I didn't end my marriage. I ended a scam. And I didn't lose friends. I learned they were never mine. Sounds like you're justifying it. Maybe, but it's also true. Claire made a final note. For what it's worth, you handled it better than most. You could have hurt people. Instead, you just made them face the music. She left and I stood in the doorway, watching cars roll through the December dusk. Come Monday, this place would be alive with people working towards something real. Getting stronger, feeling better, building lives that mattered. That was enough. Friday night, I was locking up when I spotted a familiar figure across the street, Brad leaning against a bus stop, wearing a jacket that had seen better days. I crossed over. Waiting for the bus? The car got repoed, he said, not meeting my eyes. Everything else too. Where are you staying? Couch surfing, friend of a friend. We stood there, 2 guys who'd been enemies, now just strangers tied by a messy past. Funny thing, Brad said. What? I liked you before all this. Met you at Rusty's once. Thought you were a stand-up guy. I am a stand-up guy. No, you're not. Stand-up guys don't wreck lives over a woman. I shook my head. I didn't wreck your life over a woman. I held you accountable for running a dangerous business, dodging taxes, and lying to your partner. Same thing. Not even close. The bus pulled up, and Brad climbed on. Through the window, I saw him slump in a back seat, already fading from the world he used to strut through. I walked to my truck and drove home to a house that finally felt like mine. Saturday night, I sat at Rusty's bar, sipping a beer and half watching a hockey game on the TV above the counter. The place was packed, workers blowing their paychecks on drinks and fleeting company, the air thick with chatter and cigarette smoke from the patio. Mike walked into Rusty's at 9:30, spotting me at the bar and freezing like he was deciding whether to throw a punch or bolt. After a moment, he shuffled over. Pete, can I get you a beer? Got one, I said, nodding at my bottle. He ordered a lager and stood next to my stool, both of us staring at the hockey game on the screen without really watching. How you holding up? He asked. Doing fine. You? Not great. Kelly found out about Karen. She kicked me out. Kelly was Mike's girlfriend, a nurse who worked with veterans and believed in giving people a shot unless they cheated. That's rough, I said, turning to face him. You mean that? Yeah, I didn't want your relationship to take a hit. Just mine. Just my friendship with you. Mike downed half his beer in one gulp. Was it worth it? Everybody keeps asking me that. Because we want to know. Know what? If getting even feels as good as they say. I sipped my beer, thinking it over. Around us, guys laughed, argued, swapped stories about their jobs, their kids, their lives. Regular folks grinding through the day, paying their bills, trying to do right by the people they cared about. It's not about revenge, I said finally. What's it feel like? Like mopping up a spill. Mike nodded slowly. Guess that tracks. Does it? You were always good at fixing messes. We finished our drinks without another word. When Mike left, he didn't say goodbye. Neither did I. Sunday morning, I pulled up to the gym and found Tara already there, sorting membership files and prepping for Monday's opening. You don't have to work weekends, I said. I want to, she replied. This place is going to be something real. How do you know? Because you're doing it right. I grabbed a coffee from the pot she'd brewed. Through the windows, I saw folks jogging along the canal, couples walking dogs, families heading to brunch or church, little routines holding their worlds together. Tara? Yeah? What got you into running a gym? She looked up from her laptop. My mom had a stroke when I was 15. 50, out of shape, stressed from work, never took care of herself. I figured if I could help people get healthy, maybe I'd spare some other kid from going through that. Does it work? When someone hits their target weight, finishes their first 5K, or just feels better in their skin? Yeah, it works. I nodded. That's a solid reason. What's yours? I sipped my coffee, staring out at the city waking up, people moving through their Sunday, following rules and habits that kept things steady. I needed something clean, I said. Clean? Something not tangled up in lies or betrayal. Something that is what it says it is. A gym. Monday morning, we opened at 6 a.m. First customer was a woman in her 40s aiming to drop 20 pounds for a family reunion. Next was a roofer rehabbing a shoulder injury. Third was a grad student who couldn't afford the upscale gyms but needed a place to lift. By noon, we had 15 new memberships and a wait list for training sessions. Not a bad start, Tara said. Not bad at all. I spent the afternoon bolting down new equipment, checking every wire and bolt for safety. The work was straightforward, purposeful, the kind that feels good when you know it matters. At 5:30, someone coughed behind me while I was tweaking a pulley on a cable machine. Greg. Hey, Pete, he said, voice low. Can we talk? I finished the adjustment and turned. Greg looked rougher than he had a month ago, worn thin by guilt and the weight of his own mistakes. What do you want? To apologize. For real, not just words. Go ahead. I screwed you over. Our friendship, our history, everything we were to each other. I did it because I was weak, selfish, and Karen made it sound like you wouldn't care. But you knew I'd care. Yeah, I knew. So why'd you do it? Greg leaned against a treadmill, looking drained. Because it felt good to be wanted. My life was a mess. Debts, stress, and she made me feel like I mattered. Mattered enough to sleep with your best friend's wife? Yeah, I nodded. At least you're owning it. Does that mean anything? It means something. Not a lot, but something. Any chance we could be friends again? No, never. Greg took the words like a gut punch. What if I make it right somehow? How? I don't know. Work for you, help out, pay you back. Greg, the debt you owe isn't about money or favors. You took something that can't be replaced. What? Trust. He stood there staring around the gym like he was trying to burn it into his memory. Finally, he nodded. I get it. Do you? I think so. I betrayed you, and betrayal doesn't expire. Exactly. I'm sorry, Pete. For what it's worth, I mean it. I know you do. Greg shuffled toward the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, Pete, I think what you pulled off was something else. What did I pull off? You didn't lay a hand on anybody. You could have, but you didn't. You just let the chips fall where they deserved to. That's all I was after. I know. That's what makes it stand out. Greg walked out, and I went back to tweaking the cable machine. Through the windows, the city was winding down for the night. Office lights glowing, apartments coming alive, folks heading home to whatever waited for them. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Karen. I'm moving to Denver. Thought you should know. I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it without a reply. At 8:30, I locked up the gym and drove home. The house didn't feel hollow anymore. Just calm, like it was truly mine, not some place I was squatting in. I threw together a sandwich, flipped on the news, and hit the sack by 11 a.m. Come morning, I'd get up, head to the gym, and help folks chip away at their goals. One workout at a time. It wasn't the life I'd mapped out, but it was the one I'd carved from the rubble of my marriage and friendships. Straightforward, honest, and all mine. 6 months later, I was in my office at the gym, going over the monthly numbers. We were in the black, memberships were climbing, and Tara had talked me into adding a dietitian to the roster. On the wall behind my desk hung a photo from the grand reopening, a small plaque beneath it reading, "Second chances are built, not handed out." A knock pulled me from my thoughts. "Come in." Tim stood in the doorway, dressed in jeans instead of his work gear. "Pete, got a minute?" "What's up?" "I quit the crew today." "Why?" "Because working for you, knowing what I did, was eating me alive. Every day, waiting for you to can me or call me out or settle the score. I told you I wasn't going to do anything. That made it worse." I leaned back in my chair. "Where you headed?" "Got a gig with Harper Electric, mostly wiring clinics and libraries." "Solid move." Tim shifted, uneasy. "I wanted to say thanks." "For what?" "For not tearing me apart. You could have, but you didn't." "Didn't need to. You've been beating yourself up plenty. You slept with my wife, and you've been carrying that guilt ever since. Anything I'd do would just be piling on." Tim's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "That's what you call it? Piling on? Call it pointless. You're not my enemy, Tim. You're just a guy who screwed up big." He nodded, turning to go, then paused. "Pete? Yeah? I hope you find someone worth your time." "Thanks." After Tim left, I sat there thinking about the last 6 months. I'd lost a wife, 3 friends, and the idea that my life was on steady ground. In its place, I'd gained a business, a purpose, and the certainty that I could handle whatever came if I faced it head on. The gym was about to close. Tara would lock up and arm the system, and I'd drive back to my quiet house. Tomorrow I'd do it all again, one step at a time, building something real from the scraps of what got broken. Outside my window, the city eased into night. Cars weaving through streets, lights popping on in apartments. People living by whatever rules or hopes or deals kept them going. Pete Walsh had figured something out. Revenge wasn't about smashing the people who hurt you. It was about not letting their mess decide your next move. I flicked off the office lights and headed home.